Okay. So how I got into composting. I am a economics marketing major. I am not a compost guru major. I use my standard chemistry, biology, botany degree, soil science that I've got, classes I took to help me with composting. I started in the year 2002. Was hired to do a feasibility study in composting with Congrow Incorporated before we changed into Congrow Soil Notes in 2008. And that year is the year that we purchased our compost turner. Very high learning curve on that product, or changing our process, going from front end loaders to a windrow system. Extremely big learning curve. We had several problems with cross-contamination with 0157H7. We had a customer at the time that required us to test our compost for 0157H7, even though it wasn't an issue in 2002. So we started doing that. In that same process, we came in and worked with Primus Labs because we were getting some unusual results back on our composting and helped them establish their SOPs regarding compost or regarding compost sampling. I helped co-wrote that with a gentleman called Mark Shakespeare, who is now, I do believe, at Walmart. And from that, which is now our SOPs in compost sampling. After we did that, we learned that we were having issues with compost, with cross-contamination. The compost turner, windrow compost turner, is the biggest cross-contaminator. It is like that of a meat grinder. It'll just spread whatever little pathogen it is there. You can have it in one small area, and 0157H7, you can have it on one piece of meat. It'll spread it through everything. And that is the one thing that we have found out. And was reiterated this last summer with drift from, believe it or not, chicken pellets, fertilizer. No pathogens, but just being 200 feet plus away, the light dust drift caused the fecal coliforms in our finished compost to rise and to heat up our compost piles to the point where they're still at 130, 140 degrees Fahrenheit at 36. Yeah. From our experience, the first 2 years of having our compost turner, we learned numerous problems. One thing was oldest to newest, so from the oldest compost to the newest compost. The other thing is to wash your compost after you use it at the end of the day. Biggest thing in the world, because it is such a huge cross-contaminant. Even if you're just pressure washing it off, you don't even have to sanitize it. Just pressure wash it off, let it dry is the best thing for it to do. Literally, we had an incident where I scraped 2 1-gallon Ziploc baggies off the deflector shield because the first guy we trained to wash the compost turner after we had an incident happen, he left. He trained the next guy. When he left, he trained the third guy. Didn't make sure he was properly trained. The inside of the compost turner was absolutely spotless. Did a beautiful job. The whole back curtain was all wet. And this is when we had 3 compost yards. So that turner would go through one compost yard, be picked up, put on the trailer, shipped down to the next compost yard, turn, go over. So we were composting at Hollister, Salinas, and Gonzales. Just from that alone, that compost turner contaminated over 8,000 tons of compost with 0157. Now, this is in our early stages of composting. We had not developed the 15-week program yet. And we were like, oh my God, we still have, but the compost was still active. So we were able to find out one where the problem was. After we solved that problem, we went through, recomposted everything, retested everything. Everything was fine. We were able to rectify that problem. But every time we've had a problem, we've gone through and done a cause analysis of what has happened so that it doesn't happen again. And that's partly due to my own personal OCD type of business. I have to find out why it happened.
Ronnie, I have a question. So you mentioned that you do a diverse source for your compost.
Yes.
You see a change of your maturing time, of what you have to monitor depending on the source of your feedstock. What kind of advice you'll have for someone who's trying to do their own compost at home, like depending if it's poultry, horse, more bedding, less bedding. What's your experience with those processes?
We're really not too worried about combinations. I mean, we are to a certain extent. I mean, you don't want a whole lot of chicken manure in with your horse manure because it's going to get way too hot, and then you get gasification. Obviously, the ammonia comes off. So we try to use around 20%, 20 to 25% on the poultry litter, and then blend in the horse manure and other manures that we have there. Horse manure can also gasify ammonia because, especially if it's from the western area, it has a lot of the bedding material, the shavings. It has a lot of that in there. And so, we just try to do that. Grape hummus, we love using grape hummus. We still use grape hummus. We still get some of that. We also use, vegetable coals, which is a great moisture source at the beginning. But yeah, I mean, it's, the more biodiverse you can get with your compost pile, the better off you are, especially when you're having other feedstocks in there, whether it's, cow, horse, poultry litter. Even if you have a local llama grower or somebody who has alpacas and you want to bring in their manure or sheep, something like that, accept it, bring it in there, but make sure you're composting it. Make sure you're getting the temperatures that you need to get.
So I just have a comment. You brought up the high school and how difficultly, with compost. And I think some of small scale farms, they have a few animals also want to put compost. Get the final material in the pile, that small pile, and get those temperatures.
It's very hard. It's extremely difficult because physics is against you. We're dealing with piles that are 5 feet high and 14 foot wide. So we have the physics for that pile to get there. You're going to need something a minimum of 5 feet high, 4 to 5 feet high to get that pile really going. And so it's very hard for somebody who is composting, who's trying to do backyard composting. And one of the things that we talk about, and especially encouraging people to backyard composting, and that was one of the talks at the U.S. Composting Council convention here a few years back, was the fact that if you look at those, if you look at the probes, those probes, the Rio Temp backyard composting probes, hey, you're doing great if you get over 130 degrees Fahrenheit, but most people are getting in that 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, does that mean that that's not going to kill pathogens? Yes, it will kill pathogens, but a longer time. You need to have it sit there for a longer time at that temperature so that it'll turn around and kill off those pathogens. So it's, again, time. That's why you turn around and tell them, figure 2 to 3 years. What we do in 3 months and 15 weeks is what, an ancient forest took 300 years. So, we're doing it at a much more accelerated rate. It's not just curing or aging the material. And that's one of the things that people think of when they think of composting. And it's an ignorance on a lot of people's behalf, officials, etc. And so when FSMA was first being written, I would get a lot of phone calls at that, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning deal, as I was getting ready to head out the door, having my cup of coffee, and what is composting? So, is there a big difference between the LGMA, the Leafy Greens Market Agreement composting versus the compost of today. And I said, well, the big difference is you have to add an extra test. Everybody thinks that horses are all fine, but they can get sick with these items because if they're eating feed that has, say, like a high fecal mass of birds on it, they can actually wind up getting sick and carry it for long periods of time. They can actually be sick, and even after they get cleaned up, they still can carry it, which always cracks me up because people think, oh, horse manure, you just give it away, it's fine. I'm like, yeah, but now you're liable, which a lot of people don't realize. And so, but when they bring it to like our facility, all their liability has dropped because we assumed all that liability was licensed. We adopted the regulations from the state of California, and that's part of California Code of Regulations, Title 14, Division 7, Chapter 3.1, Article 7. Yes, speak of verse and speak it as a verse. And that states, that we have to have a minimum in the windrow system. We have to have a minimum of 5 turns in a 15-day period and be over 131 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, does that include Saturday and Sunday? No, it does not. So we asked and got an okay. If we pull temperatures Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and water Thursday, Friday, turn Saturday, is that okay? Yes. So we're able to maintain those temperatures of 130 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 weeks. At the end of the 5 weeks, it really starts to come off. Especially if you're keeping it at that 35 to 40% moisture content. That's the big thing, that 35 to 40% moisture content. You can get high temperatures in a less moisture content. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that'll happen. But you're not getting the proper kill. Steam is everything. And when I sit there and I talked about, the 4 things: moisture, temperature, turns, and time, that moisture is very, very important. You have to have that moisture in the beginning so that you have those piles coming up. You might start off at a lower moisture content in the beginning, but you want to build that up and build it up so that it has that area in there. So it's steam. I know some people sit there and say, well, I want something that's a little bit more, immature, because what they're looking for is a higher nitrogen content in a more immature compost. The problem being is, green waste. Yeah, I can understand that. And in a manure-based compost, yeah, I mean, if when you sit there, you're looking at raw manure at 4%. Yeah, you're going to get a higher nitrogen content, but you're better off having a 2 to 1.5% nitrogen content at a stable product that's mineralized, that's not going to leach out, that when you go to spread it on that field with the microbial activity in the compost itself, it's going to react better. So, as you're increasing the organic content and that microbial activity in your soil, you're increasing your cation exchange capacity. This is where your basic chemistry comes into effect. Increasing the cation exchange capacity, that increases the ability of the plant and the fertilizer to interact quicker, where you don't have to use as much. So that's the great part about it. So you're not over fertilizing. Or if you do want to build up fertilizer in the soil, if you want to build up your NPK in your soil and have it stable by increasing that organic content in the soil, that's what you're doing. And so, you can actually have those reserves in the soil, and it's not going to wash down the tail ditch at the end of the day. It's going to sit there. It's actually helping increasing fertilization, filtration, water absorption. Increasing organic content in your soil by 1%. 1%. You're increasing your water hold capability by 16 to 25,000 gallons per acre. These are all the benefits of compost, and it doesn't matter what source it comes from. It doesn't matter if it's manure based. It doesn't matter if it's green waste. What the whole process is how it's processed, and is it done properly and cleanly.